Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming in such large numbers. My name is Shailendra Yashwant. I am Media Advisor to Climate Action Network South Asia, and I'll be moderating today's press conference. With me, we have Sanjay Vashisht, Director of CANSA South Asia, Zinat Niazi, Vice President of Development Alternatives, and Krishnaswamy Srinivas, who is CEO of Vasudha Foundation. So without much ado, shall we start?
Thank you, Shailendra. Well, I'm going to speak and share our thoughts about Prime Minister Modi's speech yesterday and issues that he highlighted and can certainly add momentum in ongoing negotiations. His speech was very clear. I think one of the prominent things that he highlighted was the contours or outline of contours of an equitable and ambitious deal that should look like from Paris. He also laid emphasis on sustainable aspirations and needs of poor people in developing countries like India, and the fact that India is not negotiating for wasteful lifestyle, while he also his speech also indicated that, well, in a way, developed countries are trying to protect a sustainable lifestyle, while developing countries are negotiating for a survival of its people, and which is also demanded from a climate justice perspective. Thus, polluters need to create space, carbon space, to meet these aspirations of poor people who need to live a decent lifestyle on Earth. Developed countries also need to make renewable energy affordable and accessible and reliable in developing countries, in addition to taking up its own obligations. He also communicated that India is aspiring to follow a lighter carbon footprint to growth, and in order to seek assistance, he called for partnerships to bring clean energy within reach for all. Reducing dependence on fossil fuel through levies and reduction of subsidies and switching to fuel wherever possible are some examples or initiatives he shared with the rest of the world that India is trying to achieve. He also demanded or called for developed countries to create maximum room which they can through emission cuts, ambitious emission cuts, and so that others can grow and we can still live in a far below 2-degree temperature goal. I'll stop here.
Yeah. Thank you. I'd like to build upon the situation that India is in today, confronted with the challenge of bringing in sustained well-being for 1.25 billion citizens amidst increasing threats, indeed demonstrated impacts of climate change, which we are already experiencing. We are a nation where over 300 million do not access safe and sustainable energy at present, and most to no energy services, constraining their development potential. 60% of our human settlement infrastructure, city infrastructure, is yet to be built, and we have over 40 million families that need housing in the next period up to 2022. Over 300 million need safe water and sanitation, and 700 million are dependent on climate-sensitive livelihoods, especially with agriculture that's mainly monsoon-dependent, and with monsoon patterns that are being affected drastically, the base of our economy is threatened. Over 300 million of us survive on less than $1 a day, and we are 18th on the Climate Risk Index. With a high level of exposure and vulnerability, we cannot afford to take climate response actions lightly. We are taking steady steps to initiate the decoupling of development from GHG emissions, moving towards sustainable development. We've been active in the design of the SDG framework, which was signed by the UN bodies, 193 nations, just in September this year, and we recognize fully well that the climate goal number 13 cannot only be the standalone goal, but the fact that it is integrated across all 17 goals. And that's critical for us, and that the climate change energy debate cannot be complete without looking at the impacts of this climate change on how and what we grow to eat, which is our food, which is the energy, water, and land and marine system concerns, what and how we build, which is the human settlements and infrastructure concerns, and how we move our people and goods, which is the transportation concerns. 74% of the emissions come out of these sectors. In addition, we are a country of over 65% of population below 35 years of age. So an aspiring young nation that needs jobs, that needs livelihoods, and the manufacturing industry where these will come from. So we have the energy sustainable livelihood concern as well. In order to ensure a low carbon and resilient pathway for future development, we will need finance and deployment of new technology. Not just for the energy goals, but also for adaptation and resilience building, so that development is truly sustained and does not roll back with the increasing frequency and intensity of cyclones and droughts and the risk of vectors to health. Looking across each of those goals, which are critical to the climate goal number 13, and then therefore critical to the discussions that are happening in these next 2 weeks, we see that a 2.5 billion USD requirement for climate mitigation action. Besides that, we have a gap of over 206 billion USD for adaptation over a period of 2050 to 2030, besides financing for strengthening resilience and disaster preparedness. In addition, India will need to expand in and needs technology, partnerships, research and development, and capacity building. So these are the spaces which we are really concerned about, besides at the same time putting our shoulders to the wheel of an ambitious climate goal that we are committed to.
Thank you, Zeenath. Good afternoon, all. Taking off from where Zeenath left on technology and the need for technology cooperation, the Prime Minister yesterday announced the International Solar Alliance between over 100 developed and developing countries, as well as industries, laboratories, institutions, which could potentially drive the take-up of renewable energy in poor communities around the world, improving prosperity, health, and creating jobs in the wake of the rollout. India will host this initiative and contribute approximately $30 million over the next 5 years to build it up. This announcement, importantly, comes in the wake of the ambitious renewable energy targets of 175 gigawatts of additional capacity announced by India by 2022, which from a current level of roughly 26 gigawatts will be a huge jump, close to about 7 times. Yes, many of you would have this question, would India still continue to depend on coal? The answer is yes. India would continue to depend on coal and other fossil fuels, at least in the short and medium term, and this is justifiable for a number of reasons. I've just listed out a couple of them. The priority for India right now is to secure its energy future. Second, importantly, it needs to ensure that its base load energy requirements is addressed. As of now, there is very little option for India other than coal to address the base load, since it does not have access to any other bridging fuel, and its hydroelectric generation is also proving to be intermittent. And further, last but not the least, on this priority, India needs to provide electricity access to close to 300 million households that do not have access to electricity. Now, however, we believe that the ambitious targets for renewable energy would be a game changer and could potentially reduce the dependence on coal much faster and further. We do see this happening given the various policy frameworks in place, including those that could ensure increased and rapid investments in the renewable energy and the energy efficiency sector, both at the federal, that's the national level, as well as at the states, the subnational level. To give a couple of examples, quick examples, the fact that some states have made it mandatory for large buildings to install solar rooftop systems is one. And then in the energy efficiency sector, some states have announced 100% household LED lighting for all its households with very sharp targets of 2016, 2017. Further, if Paris could come up with a good agreement, particularly on issues such as post-2020 finance and means to implementation, this could propel further positive developments on energy transition to renewable energy. Two last points that I would like to make related to the Paris outcome and with regard to the statement made by the Prime Minister yesterday. One pertains to his statement that it is not just a question of historical responsibility, but also that when he was talking of responsibilities of countries and joint responsibility to address the issue of climate change, he made it very clear that it's not just a question of historical responsibility, but that the developed countries have most room to make cuts, to make the strongest impact, which sets the tone of flexibility and cooperation, and also the stress that developed countries need to take immediate actions, both in ambition as well as finance and means to implementation to address climate change. The second point that also sends a very positive signal in the statement is that he talks of we will succeed to have a good deal in Paris if we have the wisdom and courage to craft a genuinely collective partnership that balances responsibilities and capabilities with aspirations and needs. I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. We'll take questions. Yeah, our colleagues are around with mics, so please identify yourself. And
Hi, Tom Mitchell from New Matilda in Australia. I'm just wondering what role nuclear power is likely to play in India's efforts to adapt to climate change and mitigate emissions.
Sri?
Yeah, if you look at the current installed capacity of nuclear, it's roughly about 3,000 megawatts. Though India has ambitious plans of adding additional nuclear capacities, given past trends and given the time taken for new plans to come up, my personal view is that nuclear will not be much of an additional of nuclear power in the next 10-15 years at least.
Yes, please. Lady there.
Thank you. Sophie Yeo from Carbon Brief. I was wondering if you could outline India's negotiating position on the issue of the ratchet mechanism and where they stand on topics like the 5-year cycles and increasing ambition over time, and also with the issue of the long-term goal. I saw that they weren't supporting the ideas of decarbonisation and carbon neutrality, but is there a long-term goal that they are going to support in the text? Thank you.
Well, on ratcheting up and ambition, India, I think Prime Minister Modi's speech also indicated that India is looking for a comprehensive deal, not only mitigation. So that's the one expectation of India. Second, certainly ambition is linked with means of implementation, basically climate finance and technology available to increase the ambition and increase the share of renewable energy. So that's certainly linked with it. There's still uncertainty in terms of means of implementation. And there's no clarity on what post-2020 climate finance regime will look like. On long-term goal, about decarbonization or 100% RE, India is making efforts. It's striving to increase renewable energy to the maximum possible in the resources available as of now. Certainly, we hope that Paris outcome gives the instrument that can help us to achieve the challenges it faces in terms of storage technologies or in terms of other aspects to scale up renewable energy. And that will give it confidence. We hope it gives confidence to India to agree on a long-term goal sooner. But as of now, there are challenges. There is still a lack of confidence in renewable energy to achieve the base load that a country needs. And that's why a long-term goal could be a progress post-Paris.
Yes, please. Gentleman at the back. Yeah, he's standing up before him. Next, I have you.
Hi, my name's Ben Adler from GRIST. You talked a lot about why India, unlike developed countries, can't commit to cuts in total carbon emissions. It's only committed to cuts in carbon intensity because it wants to grow its economy a lot, needs to. But I'm wondering why India, in your opinion, can't commit to peaking carbon emissions at a certain date in the future, the way that China has, and China, of course, is similarly situated to India?
Well, India is right now in a position that China was 7 years back or maybe 10 years back. India, like I said earlier, there are close to about 300 million people who do not have access to electricity, and India has a huge shortage or deficit in overall both peak as well as baseload electricity requirements. So given that, right now the government is looking at all options to secure its energy future, and to ensure that every citizen has access to 24/7 electricity access. And there is a target of 2022 to meet this aspirations. Given that, I think at this point of time, expecting India to accept on a peaking year or to come up with some sort of a targets. And again, if you look at the progress in the negotiations on either climate finance or on means to implementations, there's very little progress. There's very little money on the table. There's also very little on technology cooperation, so to speak. So given that there is lack of progress in the means to implementation, expecting India at this point of time to come up with a peaking year immediately, or to come up with some cutoff year as to when it would reduce its coal, would not be justifiable.
Yes.
Thanks. John Vidal from The Guardian. Does India aspire to be a world leader in these talks, or is it just going to jettison the other developing smaller countries later on when the crunch comes? I'm thinking specifically of differentiation, which Modi and others have made a big deal of, but in fact, can you hold that position?
I think, well, looking at the Solar Alliance announced yesterday and other initiatives being carried out by India, India is trying to be a leader in, at least within developing countries, in terms of increasing the renewable energy share. And that's something we need to acknowledge. In terms of, what was the second issue you asked about? Differentiation, yes. I think India has already shown a leadership by agreeing to the fact that it agreed to submit its INDC. So it has certainly stepped ahead and made us flexibility in terms of the conventional differentiation definition that used to be done. I think it's time for developed countries to step ahead and talk about it. Of course, if developed countries' efforts are to bring a symmetry among all countries, is not acceptable, because that the climate justice doesn't demand that kind of framework. That will leave poor behind the development or growth needs or the basic necessities an individual need on Earth. And symmetrical is something India has been opposing. I would again say that India has been representing poor and vulnerable in negotiations by making these demands.
Gentleman in front and then the gentleman behind. I've got all of you.
Thank you. Tang Zhijiang from China Xinhua News Agency. Could you tell us about India's position in the legal bindingness of this agreement? Do you think that the legally binding level of developed country and developing country should be different in contribution and transparency and these elements? Thank you.
Yes, India's position right now is that differentiations need to cut across all elements, including a legally binding agreement. Our reading is that India is not opposed to be part of an agreement that a legally binding agreement for all countries. However, having said that, they would definitely like to see that there is a differentiation of actions between between developed and developing countries. And just to add to what Sanjay said, to your previous question, I think we also need to understand from where India is coming from, or the Indian perspective. No matter what parameters we look at, whether we look at per capita GDP, whether we look at GDP, whether we look at Human Development Index, India's Human Development Index is 0.54 as against other countries of 0.9, 0.85 and 9, the high countries with high Human Development Index. So there's a huge gap. There's also huge poverty levels in India. So given that, I think we need to understand where India is coming from and why it's not, I wouldn't say that our reading, the civil society reading, at least from India, is that some of the position that it takes, particularly on means of implementation of climate finance, is not to jettison any sort of an agreement, but to ensure that the developing countries have the space for it to grow and develop and achieve the aspirations of of its citizens.
Gentleman behind John, right there.
Hi, Christian Miersch from the Baltic Society Klimaretter. The developed countries would like to have a uniform transparency MRV system, whereas the Indian government is proposing a bifurcated way with two different systems. Now, what's the position of like civil society? Do you support the Indian government in this position, or do you have another position? Thank you.
Well, there are two positions that India has been advocating. One, MRV MRV framework for a supported action, and international consultation and analysis for unilateral actions that developing countries are going to take up. We do support this because I think, I think we need to trust developing countries' internal system that ensures there is a verification, there is a transparent mechanism that are in place. Second, unilateral actions are driven by domestic schemes, and that is why it is, and we can certainly link it with national communications or other instruments through which the reporting can happen. Verification, if the climate finance is made available for action, is something that comes under preview and needs to be, a donor is eligible to come and get it verification. But we need to bring in differentiation again here to make sure that developing countries can achieve climate agenda in the most transparent manner and most comfortable manner in terms of not getting, I would say, not getting interference in the domestic policies.
Hello, Giles Parkinson from the Australian website Renew Economy. Can you give me your outlook for imported coal? You talked about coal generation staying for a while and being needed, but what are your estimates of India's needs for imported coal? And I'm also wondering if you can expand upon your reasons for nuclear not grabbing a major share. I'm just wondering if that's got something to do with the Indian government's reluctance to take on insurance risk, or is it just the cost, or is it another reason?
Yeah, to answer your second question first on nuclear, one is the cost and the time taken. If you look at what India would like to do, or if you look at the a critical review of what India wants to do in the next 5-7 years, 2022 is an important year for India, and a lot of targets are for the year 2022. That also happens to be the 75th year of India's independence. So it would like to ensure that its 300 million Indians are covered by electricity, etc., that I've already spoken of. In the light of this, I think India would be looking at options which would ramp up its electricity production, or fuel sources that would ramp up its electricity production at the earliest. And if you look at time frame taken for nuclear as against the other fuel sources, it would be much longer. So in the light of this, I think, and of course the cost of nuclear is also prohibitive. And then there is also issue of getting the technologies the fuel for the nuclear. So it's a multiple whole sort of issues. I don't think, my personal reading is that I don't think it's got anything to do with insurance, because you do have the liability bill that has been passed. India would not like to dilute it, but but then this government has also assured nuclear suppliers that they would look at ways to ensure that the liability doesn't get passed on to them. But that's not the reason for nuclear to be slow. In terms of import of coal, the current minister has announced that he would like to reduce the India's dependence on imported coal, and has announced the ramping up of domestic production of coal to about 1 billion tons, 100 billion tons, right? In year on year. So I mean, that again is a question, because India, the quality of coal is extremely poor. Indian coal is poor. Not sure how much they would really end up in reducing the dependence on imported coal, because imported coal actually improves the efficiencies of the coal-fired power plant. So I'm not very sure if there would be a substantial decrease in the import of coal.
A lady in the first row. We have been shown the 5-minute time limit range already, so limit 2 more questions, and after that. And of course, you can continue talking to us bilaterally later. Please.
Elaine Mills from Argus Media. I'm just wondering, this target that, or this alliance that India has announced, it's no different from the INDC it pledged a while ago. I'm just trying to work out what actually is new in terms of what it announced. So it said it will contribute $30 million over the next 5 years. Is that in its own solar capacity? And to what degree is this alliance and its aims dependent on developed countries coming forward with finance? Because India has said its INDC is dependent on means of implementation. The other thing I'm trying to work out, apologies, but I can't find a press release detailing the countries that signed up to this alliance. So the African Renewables Initiative that was announced, is that one and the same thing? Thank you.
I'll do the second part. On the INDC, the 2 key, and just to understand if if I heard you correctly, India's INDC, the 2 key issues related to the mitigation. One is the 33 to 35% GDP emission intensity to GDP reduction by 2030 to 2005 levels, and the second one is 40% non-fossil fuel. Now, what target by 2030 of the total energy mix? Now, what the minister said, what is there in the INDC is that this target of 40% non-fossil fuel in the energy mix would be met come what may. They were hoping to get, and if they do get financing for it or the means of implementation to it, it would be welcome. But I don't think our reading is that it's not conditional on the means to implementation. I thought I heard you say that it's conditional. Our reading is that it's not conditional, because we did clarify this, and they said that this is something that India would strive to achieve. The mix of 40% non-fossil fuels in the energy mix by 2030. And if they do get financing for it, that would be welcome, or technologies for it, that would be welcome, but that's not conditional.
Thank you. Last question.
On the solar.
On the solar mission, the reading that we have from the announcements yesterday is that it is this alliance of 170 plus countries. Yeah, the list is available in the background paper that was circulated yesterday, of which is the countries between the Tropic of CANSA and Tropic of Capricorn, the tropical countries. The irony being that these majority of them are those who are unable to produce the solar energy because of the reason of being in the developing and LDC situation. And the alliance would enable these countries to come together to seek for investments, to seek for technology support. And the pledge that India has made in terms of the support is the next 5 years of hosting the secretariat, providing the land and human resources to that secretariat, providing also supports for capacity building and building up the cases for seeking investment supports for the entire alliance. So it's not just for the INDC within the situation.
I'm sorry, I think we've run out of time completely, and we can continue talking just outside. The next press conference is here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.